My name is Soleil Normandy and I am 31 years old. Have you ever wanted to burn someone's world down, not with fire and rage but with the cold, hard, undeniable truth? I have. I've stood in the center of a gilded ballroom, surrounded by the most powerful figures in my industry, wearing a simple cook's uniform and prepared to dismantle the career of a kingmaker. I was about to expose the most revered food critic in the city as a complete and utter fraud, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. But just 6 months before that moment, I wasn't a ghost in a kitchen, plotting my revenge. I was Chef Soleil Normandy, the proud, two-Michelin-starred chef and co-owner of Lob, a restaurant I had poured my entire soul into. I was at the top of my game. And then, in the space of a single afternoon, I found myself being fired from my own kitchen by the man I had once called my partner, the man I had built a dream with. It was all because of a single, venomous review written by a man I now knew was not just a critic, but a criminal. That review didn't just cost me my restaurant, it cost me my name, my reputation, and my faith in the world I had given my life to. Before I tell you how I lost everything and how I meticulously planned my comeback from the very bottom, I'd love to know where you're all watching from tonight. Drop a comment below and tell me. And if you have ever been knocked down, betrayed, or underestimated and had to fight your way back, please hit that like button and subscribe, because this story, this fight, is for you. Our restaurant, L'Aube, which means the dawn in French, was supposed to be a new beginning for both of us, for me and for Julian. We met at culinary school. I was the one who lived in the library, my fingers stained with beet juice and smelling of toasted spices, my notebooks filled with flavor pairings and chemical breakdowns of the Maillard reaction. Julian was the one who charmed the instructors, who could talk his way into any internship, whose smile was as polished as his expensive shoes. He was brilliant, but his brilliance was for people. Mine was for food. We were a perfect partnership, or so I believed. I was the heart of the operation, hidden away in the heat and chaos of the kitchen, the architect of every dish, the silent force behind our 2 Michelin stars. Julian was the face. He was the one who greeted the high-profile guests, who schmoozed with the critics and investors, who gave the flowery interviews about our vision. He would stand in the elegant dining room, bathed in soft light, and speak of the philosophy behind a dish he'd never once cooked. He described the pain and passion behind my creations while I was in the back, sweating under the heat lamps, my hands raw from a 12-hour shift. He was the golden child of our professional family. The culinary world adored him. They saw a handsome, articulate visionary who was redefining modern French cuisine. They saw me, on the rare occasions I was dragged out of the kitchen, as his quiet, intense, and slightly awkward sidekick, the workhorse, the hands that brought his genius to life. The injustice of it was a low, constant hum beneath the surface of our success. I told myself it didn't matter. The food was the only thing that mattered. The stars on the door proved my worth, didn't they? I let him take the credit because I believed we were a team, and his success was my success. It was a foolish, naive belief, and the price for it was higher than I could have ever imagined. The only person who ever saw the truth of our arrangement, who saw me for who I really was my grandmother, my Maymay. She was the first kitchen I ever knew. It was a small, warm room in her countryside home that always smelled of yeast and thyme. She never measured anything. Her hands, wrinkled and knowing, moved with an innate understanding of the ingredients. She taught me that food was not about ego or accolades, it was about love, it was about memory, it was about nourishing people, body and soul. When I called her, giddy and breathless, to tell her we had received our first Michelin star, she was happy for me, but her joy was tempered with a quiet warning. "That is wonderful, ma chérie," she'd said, her voice a comforting balm over the phone. "But do not let the stars blind you, they can be cold and distant things. The real warmth is in the fire of the stove and the heart of the person you are cooking for. Always cook from your heart, Soleil. The stars will follow the truth of the food." Her words became my mantra, a small sanctuary of sanity in a world obsessed with perception and prestige. I clung to that advice, believing it would be my shield. The pressure of a Michelin-starred kitchen is a crucible. It's a relentless, all-consuming fire that either forges you into something stronger or burns you to ash. For a decade, I let it forge me. 16-hour days were the norm. I sacrificed friendships, relationships, holidays, and sleep. My forearms were a tapestry of burn marks and knife scars, each one a testament to my dedication. I learned to be faster, more precise, more resilient than anyone around me. I could break down a whole lamb in under an hour, plate 20 perfect entrees in 10 minutes, and identify a missing pinch of salt in a complex sauce from a single taste. This relentless pursuit of perfection wasn't just about ambition, it was a survival mechanism. It was the only way I knew how to prove my value in a world that so easily overlooked me in favor of Julian's charm. The kitchen was my battlefield and my sanctuary, the one place where my skills were undeniable, where the truth of my talent could not be spun or repackaged by someone else. I thought that resilience made me invincible. I was wrong, it just made my fall that much harder. The instrument of my destruction arrived on a Tuesday morning, nestled innocently in the city's most prominent newspaper. It was a review by Anton Croft, a critic with the power to make or break a restaurant with a single column. He was the undisputed king of the culinary scene, a man whose palate was considered infallible. He had visited Lobé the week before. I had personally overseen his every dish. The food was flawless, the service was impeccable. I was expecting a glowing review, perhaps even whispers of a 3rd star. What I got instead was a character assassination disguised as culinary criticism. He didn't just dislike the food, he attacked its very soul. He called my signature dish, a lavender-infused duck confit that was my mémè's recipe refined, a clumsy and desperate attempt at sentimentality. He described my carefully balanced sauces as gastronomically incoherent, and my plating as a testament to a chef who has clearly lost her way. The final line was the killing blow. Lobé, once a promising dawn, has settled into a premature and uninspired twilight. It seems Chef Normandy's vision has been eclipsed by her own ambition, leaving diners with a hollow, expensive echo of what once was. I read it 3 times, the newsprint shaking in my hands. The words were more than just critical, they were cruel, personal, and profoundly untrue. Every dish he savaged was a dish our patrons loved, a dish that had been praised by other critics, a dish I knew in my bones was perfect. It felt less like a review and more like a targeted attack. It made no sense. This was the final straw, the one thing my resilience hadn't prepared me for. My work wasn't just being judged, it was being lied about, and that was a pain I couldn't cook my way out of. I stormed into Julian's office, the newspaper crumpled in my fist. He was already on the phone, his face pale, his usually smooth voice strained. He waved me away, but I threw the paper onto his polished desk. "Did you see this?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a rage I hadn't felt in years. He ended his call and sighed, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I've seen it, Soleil. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. We've had 60 cancellations for this weekend already." "It's a lie, Julian. Every word of it is a lie. He's lying." My voice was rising, echoing in the sterile silence of his office. "You were here. You tasted the food that night. It was perfect. We both know it was." "Perfection doesn't matter anymore," he snapped, finally looking at me. His eyes were cold, distant. All the warmth I had once mistaken for affection was gone, replaced by the chilling calculus of damage control. "Anton Croft just told the entire city that our food is garbage, that you are a has-been. That is what matters now. The brand, Soleil. He destroyed the brand. Our brand is built on my food, on my work." I shot back, my heart pounding. "This is an attack on me, and you're talking about the brand? We fight this. We issue a statement. We invite other critics in. We prove him wrong." "No," he said, his voice flat and final. "We don't. We cut our losses." He stood up, straightening his tie, a gesture that was so practiced, so utterly detached, it shattered something inside me. "The investors have an emergency meeting this afternoon. They're invoking the reputation clause in our contract. They've lost faith in your vision." "My vision?" I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "My vision? Julian, this was our vision." He finally had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I have to do what's best for the business, Soleil. My hands are tied." He said it so simply, as if he were discussing inventory or staffing schedules, not ending a decade-long partnership, not throwing me out of the house we had built together. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it left me breathless. He wasn't just my business partner, he was my closest friend. I had trusted him completely. And in the face of our first real crisis, he hadn't just failed to defend me, he had used the attack as an excuse to cast me aside. He chose the money, he chose public opinion, he chose himself. He had chosen them over me. I walked out of that office in a daze. I didn't even go back to the kitchen to say goodbye to my team. I couldn't. The sounds and smells of my own restaurant felt alien, hostile. I went home to my small, empty apartment and I finally broke. The tears weren't just for my restaurant or my reputation. They were for the fool I had been, for the years of misplaced trust, for the crushing realization that I was utterly, completely alone. After the storm of grief passed, a strange, cold calm settled over me. The pain was still there, a dense, heavy stone in my chest, but beneath it, something else was beginning to harden. It was resolve. I spent 2 days in silence, replaying every moment, every conversation, every dish. Croft's review wasn't just wrong, it felt orchestrated. His praise for other, far inferior restaurants suddenly seemed suspicious. His language about my food was too personal, too pointed. A seed of suspicion took root in the barren ground of my despair. This wasn't about my cooking, this was about something else. On the third day, I called the only person I knew would understand. May, I said, my voice hoarse. I told her everything. She listened patiently, without interruption, a quiet pillar of strength on the other end of the line. When I finished, my story hanging in the air between us, she didn't offer pity. She offered fire. So? She said, her voice firm. The little king has no taste, and your handsome partner has no spine. This is what you have learned. What will you do with this knowledge, ma chérie? I don't know, I confessed. I've lost everything. No, she corrected me instantly. You have lost a building. You have lost a business partner. You have not lost your hands. You have not lost your palate. You have not lost your heart. These men, they did not give you your gift, so they cannot take it away. Your worth is not in their hands, Soleil. It never was. It is in yours. Now you must decide what you will build with them. Her words were like a splash of cold water. She was right. For years, I had been seeking validation from all the wrong places, from Michelin inspectors, from critics like Croft, from a partner like Julian. I had allowed them to define my success. The moment of decision was sharp and clear, like the edge of a newly honed knife. I wasn't going to just rebuild. I wasn't going to open another restaurant and hope for the best. That would be playing their game. I was going to change the game itself. I would expose Anton Croft for the fraud I was now certain he was. I would tear down the corrupt system that had so casually broken me. That evening, I saw an online job posting. A new, ridiculously popular restaurant called Vivant was hiring line cooks. Vivant had been open for less than a year and was run by a chef named Alain Moreau, a man with a mediocre reputation who had suddenly become the city's culinary darling, and who was leading the chorus of praise. Anton Croft. He had given Vivant a perfect, rapturous review just 2 months ago, calling Moreau an unflinching genius. I knew Moreau's food. I'd eaten it before. It was competent, but it was not genius. It was not even close to the quality of what we had served at L'Abbaye. The plan formed in my mind, audacious and terrifying. I would not fight them from the outside. I would go inside. I would get a job at Vivant. I would become invisible. I would watch, I would listen, and I would find the proof I needed to burn Anton Croft's kingdom to the ground. The next morning, I cut off my long, dark hair into a short, anonymous crop. I packed away my chef's whites, the ones with Chef Soleil Normandy embroidered over the heart. I became Sol, a quiet, down-on-her-luck cook looking for any work she could get. I was going to war, and my first battle was an interview for a job peeling potatoes in my enemy's camp. The humiliation was a physical thing, a bitter taste in my mouth that no amount of water could wash away. Walking into the back entrance of Vivant felt like a betrayal of every principle I held. The air, thick with the smell of stale grease and desperation, was a stark contrast to the fragrant, organized kitchens I had always commanded. I was no longer Chef Normandy. I was just Sol, another body to fill a slot on the line, number 27 to apply that week. The head chef, Alain Moreau, glanced at my doctored resume for less than 10 seconds. It said I had experience in mid-level bistros, that I was new in town. He was a man puffed up with unearned confidence, his chef's coat straining at the buttons. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my scarred forearms. "You can handle the grill station?" he asked, his tone dismissive. "Yes, chef," I said, my voice carefully neutral, my eyes fixed on a point just past his shoulder. The irony was suffocating. I had designed and perfected one of the most acclaimed grill stations in the country, and this man was asking me if I could flip steaks. "Fine. You start tomorrow. 6 a.m. Don't be late." He waved me away, already turning back to his paperwork. I was hired. Just like that. The ease of it was almost as insulting as the job itself. The first few weeks were a descent into a special kind of hell. The work itself wasn't the hard part. The hard part was the anonymity, the deliberate suppression of every instinct I had. I was taking orders from a cocky sous chef who was barely 25, a boy who thought he was Gordon Ramsay because he could yell loudly. I spent my days doing the most menial tasks, peeling mountains of carrots, portioning fish until my hands were numb with cold, scrubbing down the greasy, filth-encrusted grill at the end of a 14-hour shift. I bit my tongue raw to keep from correcting the sloppy knife work of the cook next to me, to keep from screaming when I saw them drowning a delicate piece of fish in a clumsy, broken sauce. I had to be average. I had to be invisible. For a chef who had built her life on the pursuit of excellence, it was a constant, grinding agony. While I was plunging my hands into ice water and scrubbing floors, the world I had left behind continued without me. I'd see articles online about Julian's desperate attempts to rebrand Lob. He'd renamed it Julian's, a move of such staggering ego it made me laugh a hollow, bitter laugh. Without my food, without my soul, the restaurant was floundering. The reviews were tepid, the reservations sparse. In stark contrast, Anton Croft's column was a weekly celebration of my new workplace. "Moreau's genius continues to unfold at Vivant," one headline blared. He praised the unflinching genius of a seared scallop dish that I knew for a fact was often sent out overcooked because the grill cook was too busy texting. He lauded the soulful depth of a beef bourguignon that I knew was made from a pre-packaged base. The disparity between the reality of Vivant's chaotic, inconsistent kitchen and Croft's rapturous prose was staggering. It wasn't just a difference of opinion, it was a fabrication. And every glowing word he wrote about Vivant was another shovelful of dirt on the grave of my reputation. The kitchen at Vivant was a motley crew of lifers, dreamers, and burnouts. At first, they kept their distance from me. I was the quiet one, Soul, who kept her head down, worked clean, and never complained. They were suspicious of my efficiency, of the preternatural speed and precision of my movements. But the shared misery of a high-pressure kitchen is a powerful glue. Slowly, I started to forge connections. My first real ally was Leo, a young cook with a fire in his eyes and a mountain of culinary school debt. He was ambitious and talented, but he was drowning in the chaos of Moreau's kitchen, his creativity stifled by the head chef's mediocrity. He worked the station next to mine, and he was the first to notice that I wasn't just another line cook. He saw the way I organized my mise en place, the way I could salvage a sauce he was about to throw out with a flick of my wrist and a pinch of something unexpected. He started asking me questions, quietly at first, then more openly. "How did you do that? How did you know it needed more acid?" My other ally was Maria, the pastry chef. She was a woman in her 40s with a cynical sense of humor and a gaze that could curdle milk. She had seen it all and trusted no one, especially not Moreau, whom she openly called Le Pufferfish behind his back. She ran her pastry station like a fortress, a small island of order and excellence in a sea of incompetence. She respected my work ethic. She saw me stay late, without being asked, to deep clean my station until it gleamed. One night, after a particularly brutal service, she slid a perfectly crafted miniature lemon tart onto my cutting board. "You work too hard for this place," she grunted, not looking at me. It was the highest praise I had received in months. Leo, Maria, and I formed an unspoken alliance, a small pocket of sanity in the madhouse. They became my new team, my chosen family, bound by the shared heat of the stoves. As I earned their trust, I started to subtly assert my skills, not enough to draw Moreau's attention, but enough to make a difference. I would whisper a suggestion to Leo on seasoning. I'd tweak the temperature on the grill by a few degrees to get a better sear. I reorganized the lowboy refrigerator for better workflow. The quality of the food coming from our corner of the line began to improve dramatically. Customers started specifically complimenting the dishes that came from my station. Moreau, in his sublime arrogance, took all the credit. "You see?" he would boast during pre-shift meetings. "My methods are working, the standards are finally rising." He was oblivious. He saw the results but was completely blind to the cause. This quiet, invisible influence was my first taste of victory. I was proving my worth on my own terms, not for stars or for reviews but for the integrity of the food itself. And as I became a trusted part of the kitchen, I started to see things. I noticed deliveries of specific, outrageously expensive ingredients: white truffles, rare Spanish prawns, tins of the finest Osetra caviar that never appeared on the main inventory sheets. They would arrive in unmarked boxes and go straight into Moreau's private office refrigerator. I started keeping a small notebook, logging dates, times, and deliveries. A few days after a secret caviar delivery, a party of special guests would arrive. Off-menu dishes would be prepared for them, dishes of a quality and creativity far beyond Vivant's standard fare. And, like clockwork, a few days after that, a glowing mention of Vivant would appear in a society column, or, more importantly, in Anton Croft's orbit. The pattern was becoming clearer. The suspicion in my gut was hardening into certainty. I was on the right path. The turning point came in the form of a local culinary competition, the Young Chef Showcase. Leo, my young, ambitious friend from the line, had entered. He was brilliant, but his confidence was shot after months of working under Moreau's thumb. He was struggling with his final dish, a modern take on a classic bouillabaisse. He had the technique, but the soul was missing. One night, long after service had ended, he was staring at his prep list, defeated. "I can't get the broth right," he confessed to me. "It's flat. Moreau told me to just add more saffron, but that's not it." "Let me see," I said softly. I tasted the broth. It was technically correct but lifeless. It lacked depth, the echo of the sea. Drawing on years of experience, on Meme's lessons about building flavor from the ground up, I began to guide him. "You're starting with the wrong foundation," I explained. "You need to toast your fennel seeds, and you need the bitterness of a burnt orange peel, just for a moment, to cut through the richness. And here," I said, grabbing a handful of shrimp shells we were about to throw out, "is where your flavor is hiding." For the next 2 hours, under the dim light of the single security bulb in the kitchen, I mentored him. I didn't cook it for him, I taught him. I showed him how to build layers of flavor, how to respect the ingredients, how to make the dish tell a story. I poured a decade of Michelin-starred knowledge into that one pot of soup. By the end, the broth was transformed. It was rich, complex, and sang with the flavor of the ocean. It was a dish worthy of a champion. Leo won the competition. His bouillabaisse was the unanimous star of the show. In his acceptance speech, holding the small, gleaming trophy, his eyes searched the crowd and found me standing at the back. "I have to thank my team," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Especially a line cook I work with named Sol. She's the most talented chef I've ever met. She taught me that cooking isn't about following a recipe, it's about finding the soul of it." This isn't my trophy, it's hers. The small ripple of attention made me nervous, but the warmth of his loyalty, the quiet pride in seeing him succeed, was a profound victory. It was the first real affirmation I'd had in months, and it came not from a critic or a star, but from a peer. A week later, the past came knocking. Julian showed up at the service entrance of Vivant just as I was finishing my shift. I almost didn't recognize him. The swagger was gone. His expensive suit was rumpled, his face was gaunt, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He had found out where I was working from a mutual acquaintance who had seen Leo's speech online. "Soleil," he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. He looked at my simple cook's whites, the cheap apron stained with grease, my hands red and chapped. He saw me, truly saw me for the first time, not as his partner or his workhorse but as a casualty of his cowardice. The role reversal was absolute, and the sight of him, so broken and humbled, brought me no joy, only a deep, weary sadness. "What do you want, Julian?" I asked, my voice flat. I'm sorry," he stammered. "Everything. It's all falling apart. The restaurant is failing. The investors are gone. I was a fool, Soleil. A coward. I knew Croft was lying. I suspected it all along. I've heard rumors about him for years, but I was too scared to stand up to him. Too scared to stand up for you. He looked down at the grimy pavement. I need you back. Lobe needs you back. The plea was so pathetic, so transparently self-serving, that I felt a surge of cold anger. There is no Lobe anymore, Julian, I said. You made sure of that when you renamed it after yourself, and you don't need me. You need a life raft. I'm not it. Please, he begged, his composure finally cracking. I can help you. I still have contacts, I have resources. I'll do anything. Help me understand what he did to us. His desperation was a tool I could use. He wasn't an ally forged in loyalty, but one forged in despair. I needed information he might have access to, financial records, corporate structures. I'm investigating Croft, I told him bluntly. I believe he's taking bribes through Chef Moreau. If you want to start making things right, you can help me prove it, no promises. No redemption. Just work. He nodded eagerly, a drowning man grasping at a splinter of wood. The seed of a new, fractured alliance was planted. Meanwhile, Chef Moreau and Anton Croft remained blissfully, arrogantly unaware of the storm gathering beneath their feet. Moreau, puffed up by Leo's win, which he promptly took credit for, claiming he'd been mentoring the boy all along, became even more insufferable. And Croft continued his praise, his columns a monument to his own fabricated reality. The irony was exquisite. The very chef he had publicly destroyed was now the secret, driving force behind the success of the restaurant he was championing. He was praising my work, my influence, without even knowing it. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place with the announcement of the annual Golden Ladle Awards, the city's most ostentatious and important culinary event. It was the Oscars of our world, and this year's guest of honor and keynote speaker was none other than Anton Croft. And, to no one's surprise, Vivant was nominated for Restaurant of the Year, a nomination based almost entirely on the foundation of Croft's glowing, fraudulent reviews. My old restaurant, Julian's sad, soulless establishment, wasn't even on the long list. This was it. This was the stage I needed, the perfect, public arena for the truth to be revealed. With Julian's reluctant but desperate help, I had finally found the smoking gun. He had used his old contacts to trace the shell corporation that was making payments to Moreau. After weeks of digging, we found it. The corporation was registered to a holding company, which was owned by a trust. And the sole beneficiary of that trust, Anton Croft. I now had the bank records, the invoices for the secret food deliveries. The emails between Moreau and a dummy account, arranging the special guest dinners. I had it all, saved on a small, unassuming USB drive that I kept tucked in my pocket like a talisman. The trap was set, now all I had to do was spring it. The night of the Golden Ladle Awards was a spectacle of glitter and ego. The grand ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel was filled with a veritable who's who of the culinary world: celebrity chefs, wealthy restaurateurs, journalists, and influencers, all dressed in their finest, sipping champagne and exchanging air kisses. I was there too, but I was invisible. As part of the nominated restaurant's team, Vivant's kitchen staff had been conscripted as caterers for the event. I was wearing my plain cook's whites, a clean apron tied around my waist, my hair tucked under a cap. I moved through the opulent room carrying trays of canapés ironically, canapés I had designed, and no one gave me a second glance. I was just part of the furniture. The ceremony dragged on, a blur of self-congratulatory speeches. Finally, the moment arrived. The host introduced the guest of honor with a fawning tribute. A man of unimpeachable integrity, a palate that has guided our city's tastes for 2 decades. Mr. Anton Croft. Croft took the stage to thunderous applause. He was in his element, a smug, self-satisfied king surveying his court. He began his keynote speech, a long, meandering sermon on the importance of honesty and vision in the culinary arts. And then, he did something that made the blood freeze in my veins. He decided to make an example. We must celebrate vision, he intoned, his voice dripping with faux sincerity, but we must also be honest about when that vision fades. Take, for example, the once great Lob, a restaurant of immense promise, a true dawn. But sadly, it became a cautionary tale. He paused for dramatic effect, his eyes sweeping the room. A chef who lost her way, who sacrificed soul for spectacle. He didn't say my name, but he didn't have to. Everyone in that room knew who he was talking about. He was using my stolen legacy, my broken dream, as a prop in his hypocritical lecture. It was the final, public degradation. The last piece of my professional life, my history, being twisted into a lie on the biggest stage imaginable. A cold, sharp clarity pierces through me. This is the moment. Now. As the applause for his speech began to swell, I put down my empty tray. I untied my apron and let it fall to the floor. My heart is a steady, powerful drum against my ribs. I am no longer hiding. I am no longer invisible. With calm, deliberate steps, I walk out from the shadows of the catering station and head directly towards the stage. In my right hand, I palm the small, cool metal of the USB drive. The room is a blur of startled faces, of tuxedos and evening gowns. A few people try to stop me, murmuring, "Staff aren't allowed," but I move past them, my eyes locked on Anton Croft. He sees me now. A flicker of confusion crosses his face, then a flash of irritation. He thinks I'm some starstruck fan, or perhaps a disgruntled employee. He gives a tight, dismissive nod to the event security, who start moving towards me. I reach the steps of the stage just as they do. The applause is dying down, replaced by a confused murmur. I don't try to shout, I don't rush the podium. I simply wait for a pause in the noise, a breath in the room's collective consciousness. It comes. And in that pocket of silence, my voice, clear and steady, cuts through the air. "Mr. Croft." Every head turns, the security guards hesitate, Croft's face tightens. "I believe you're lost," he says, his voice like ice. "No," I reply, taking another step up. "I'm exactly where I need to be. You were just speaking about integrity. I'd like to talk about it too." The room is utterly silent now. The tension is a living thing. Chef Moreau, seated at the head table for Vivant, is on his feet, his face purple with rage. "Security, get her out of here. She's a disgruntled former employee," he sputters. But before the guards can touch me, another voice rings out from the audience. "Wait, it's Julian." He stands up, his own face pale but resolute. He looks nothing like the broken man who came to me weeks ago. He looks like a man who has finally found his spine. "Let her speak." All eyes are on me. This is my stage now. I walk to the podium, standing beside a stunned and suddenly very nervous Anton Croft. I plug the USB drive into the laptop used for the presentation. With a few clicks, a bank statement appears on the massive screen behind the stage, projected for all to see. "You speak of vision, Mr. Croft," I say, my voice amplified by the microphone, resonating through the vast ballroom. "Let's talk about your vision for a shell corporation called Veritas Holdings." I detail it all. The offshore accounts, the meticulously hidden trust, and then the payments. And let's talk about where that money goes. I click again. A list of wire transfers appears on the screen, a series of payments from Veritas Holdings directly to a personal account belonging to one Alan Moreau. Moreau gasps. He looks like he's been struck by lightning. I turn my gaze on him. "Chef Moreau," I say, my voice devoid of emotion. "On October 12th of last year, you received a payment for $10,000. The very next day, a private, off-the-books delivery of white truffles and 24 tins of premium Osetra caviar arrived at Vivant's back door, paid for by Veritas Holdings. That same night, Anton Croft and 3 guests dined at your restaurant. And the following week," I pause, letting the weight of my words sink in, "he published a review calling your last-minute truffle pasta a work of divine inspiration." That's fascinating, since that pasta has never appeared on your menu, not before that night, and not since. "It's all here," I say, gesturing to the screen. "The bank records. The invoices from the supplier, the emails between your office and a dummy account, arranging the specifics of Mr. Croft's meal." I look directly at Anton Croft. His face is a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The king has been dethroned in his own court and he doesn't even have a response. Then, the final shift. From the catering area, 2 figures emerge, walking towards the stage. It's Leo and Maria. They walk past the security guards and come to stand right beside me, facing the silent crowd. "She's telling the truth," Leo says, his voice ringing with conviction. "I work at Vivant. We all saw the secret deliveries. We were the ones ordered to cook the off-menu food for Croft's table." Moreau called it special project work, Maria adds, her arms crossed, her expression one of grim satisfaction. "We knew something was rotten." In the audience, an elegant, silver-haired woman rises from her seat. "It's Meme. I invited her, hoping she would get to see this moment. A proud, tearful smile illuminates her face. Her presence gives me a final surge of strength, and then, the last piece falls into place. Julian walks steadily up the steps and stands on my other side, creating an unbroken line of 4 people, a small army of truth-tellers. He takes the microphone. "My name is Julian Croft," he says, his voice cracking but clear, "and the woman you all know as the disgraced chef of l'Abbaye is Soleil Normandy. She is the finest, most honest chef this city has ever seen. I was her partner, and I was a coward and a fool to ever doubt her. We have all," he says, his gaze sweeping across the stunned faces of the audience before landing squarely on Croft, "been fooled by him." The silence that follows is deafening, then a single camera flash, then another. The press in the room erupts, a frenzy of shouted questions and frantic scribbling. Anton Croft stands frozen, exposed, and utterly alone. Moreau has slumped back into his chair, his face in his hands. The organizers of the award ceremony look horrified, rushing about in a panic. The power in the room has shifted irrevocably. Croft and Moreau are no longer the king and his favored knight. They are 2 fraudsters, publicly and magnificently disgraced. We, the outcasts, the fired chef, the jaded pastry cook, the young idealist, and the repentant cowardaire, the ones left standing in the light. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The Golden Ladle scandal, as the papers called it, was front-page news for weeks. Anton Croft was fired in disgrace. The newspaper issued a public apology. The city launched a formal investigation into his activities, uncovering years of similar arrangements. Chef Moreau's restaurant, Vivant, imploded under the weight of the scandal and closed within a month. I was no longer a cautionary tale. I was a hero, a giant, slayer. Offers began pouring in from investors and restaurant groups, all wanting to capitalize on my story, to back my triumphant return. They wanted me to resurrect l'Abbaye, to reclaim my former glory. But I had no interest in going back. That part of my life was over. I had walked through the fire and it had burned away my desire for their kind of success. I didn't want the stars or the spectacle anymore. I just wanted to cook. 6 months later, I opened my own place. It was a small, intimate restaurant on a quiet side street, far from the glitz of the main dining district. I called it Meme. The focus was simple: honest ingredients, cooked with heart, no elaborate foams or pretentious presentations, just beautiful, soulful food. My kitchen was small, and my team was my family. Leo was my sous chef, his talent finally unleashed. Maria, tempted out of her cynical retirement, was in charge of all things sweet, her pastry station a beacon of perfection. And the dining room was run by Julian. He had come to me after the awards, stripped of everything: his reputation, his money, his ego. He was truly repentant, offering to do anything, to wash dishes, to scrub floors, just to be a part of something real again. I saw the change in him, the hard-earned humility. I didn't make him my partner. That trust would take years to rebuild, if ever. But I offered him a job as the general manager, on a strict probationary basis. "Respect is earned, Julian," I told him on his first day. "So is trust. This is your chance to start earning them back." He accepted the terms with a gratitude that was genuine and deep. The power dynamic between us was permanently, fundamentally reset. He was no longer the golden child. He was just a man working hard to atone for his mistakes, and for the first time in a long time I saw a flicker of the person I had once called my friend. My new life is quieter than my old one, but it is infinitely more fulfilling. I am surrounded not by sycophants and investors, but by people who believe in me, who value my work, not my reputation. I am free from the crushing weight of chasing validation from men like Anton Croft. I learned the hardest lesson of my life in the heat and humiliation of Vivant's kitchen. My worth is not determined by a critic's column or the number of stars on my door. It is forged in the fire of adversity. It is measured by the integrity of my work and the loyalty of the family I choose. The betrayal that almost destroyed me ultimately saved me. It forced me to burn down the hollow life I had built and create something new, something real, something entirely my own, from the ashes. So, what do you think is the greater victory? Reclaiming what was once yours or letting it go to build something entirely new and true? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about fighting for what you believe in. And always remember, your value is not determined by someone else's opinion, it is forged in the fires you walk through and defined by the truth you choose to live by.